There came a time when it rained less often, and when it did rain there wasn't much water in it, and the land started to dry up. The leaves fell from the trees. The crops hung their heads in the field. The people hardly have enough water to drink, let alone wash in. The mighty rivers became streams, the streams became washed up puddles, and the puddles vanished. And the raven, she was flying through the air and became thirsty, and she landed by one of her favourite streams, but there was nothing there. So she flew to the river to have a drink, but the river had gone. And she thought, where's all the water gone? Why isn't anybody doing anything about it? I suppose I'd better go in search of the water. So she reached down and she picked up a pebble and put it under a tongue to moisten her mouth, and she swallowed her own saliva. And then she flew up in the air in search of water. And she flew over the forests that were now like dark arrows, leafless, pointing to the sky, which was blue and not a cloud in it. She flew to the great lakes, and all they were muddy puddles with the fish flopping around in the bottom. I know where the water will be, the mountains, there's always snow there. So the raven flew to the mountains, but even the snow had gone. So she flew on for days in search of water, and nowhere could she find it. And one evening she saw, as the sun was setting, way in the distance, a glimmer of light, a flash. And so she flew towards it, in search of the water. And finally she came to the last valley on earth that had water, the last valley where all living things were still growing. She flew along the valley bottom until she came to the middle, and there she saw a giant frog, with its great big belly blubbing and wobbling. And in front of the frog there were droplets of water on the ground. It had been these that had flashed in the sunlight as it set. The frog was asleep, its eyes tightly closed. So Raven, she hopped over to one of the droplets of water, dipped her beak into it and drank, and it was sweet, fresh water. And the frog, it opened one of its eyes, and then its mouth opened and its tongue lashed out. Raven only just jumped out of the way in time. The tongue swept round and took the droplet of water up and swallowed it, and the frog said, "Leave it alone, it's mine." Raven, she watched the frog for a moment, then she hopped over to another droplet of water and started to drink. And sure enough, the tongue came out. She hopped out of the way. "Leave it alone! All the water's mine!" And Raven said, "No, it isn't. The water belongs to everybody. Without fresh water, everything will die." "I don't care. All the water's mine," said the frog. "Every bit of it." And Raven moved out of the way of that vicious tongue, and she thought, what could she do? She could fight the frog, but that would be no good, because it'd only come back later on and steal the water again. Somehow she had to teach the frog a lesson. And then she had an idea. She stepped forwards again, went up to one of the droplets and put her beak into it, and she dropped the stone that was under her tongue into the droplet of water. Sure enough, the frog, it opened its mouth and that tongue lashed out. Raven jumped out of the way, the tongue swept round, took the droplet of water up, and also swallowed the stone as well. And then the raven waited, and the frog sat there, its great big belly wobbling from side to side. And then the frog went, "Brr, brr. Oh, I've got bellyache. Oh, Raven, the pain, my stomach really hurts." And Raven said, "That's sad, isn't it? You probably swallowed a stone, you know." "Oh, Raven, can you do something about it?" "Ooh, no, I don't think so." "Oh, please, Raven. Now, if I come any closer, you'll only try and swallow me with your great big tongue." "Oh, I promise not. Please, Raven, do something." So Raven said, "All right, I'll try and help." And she went round to the side of the frog, stood next to its skin that was stretched like a skin over a drum, tight and hard. And she drew back her head and she pecked, and the belly wobbled. And Frog said, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, it's all right, I'm only trying to find the stone, Frog, it'll be okay." And she drew her head back and she pecked a hole in the side of the frog's belly, and water started to pour out, and the stone came out as well, and the water kept pouring, and it soaked into the ground, and it flowed out of the valley, and the grasslands started to drink it up, the crops lifted their head, the river flowed and flowed and flowed, and the frog got smaller and smaller and said, oh, that's so nice. Oh, Raven, "Oh, it's much nicer being in the water than it is having the water in you." And the frog swam around, and Raven, it hopped up onto the stone and said, "Well, just you remember that, frog." And the raven, she spread out a wing, and she took some of the water up and flew into the air. And as she flew across the land, the droplets fell from her and filled the lakes and the rivers around. And Raven looked up at the sky and said, "The clouds will be back soon," and she flew on. And the frog, well, it hopped onto that stone, and it looked around, and it realised what a greedy fool it had been. And it looked up at all of nature and said, "Sorry, sorry, sorry." Which is why, if you find a frog today and listen to it, you'll still hear it saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry."